Oh, come on now, you knew this day was coming. We had, what, 2 episodes where it went on and on about a burgundy convertible. Granted, it wasn't just the color, but it did look really good. The car itself actually was way better than we expected, so of course I had to call and get another one. I just didn't know that it would be this ridiculous. Forget about what they call it. That, what it's bathed in, is called grüne Hülle. A conservative 130-year-old car company calls it grüne Hülle. So that means, even though we already did a tech review on a car so similar to this, we're going to have to do another tech review to find out why this is different, more than just that it has a roof, and it's called grüne Hülle. So with that, let's dive in to whatever the hell this thing is. So let's start with one of the bigger changes, but full disclosure, it's really a lot of small changes that are hiding in exactly the same engine. So that's to say, it is the 4-liter twin-turbo V8, turbochargers packaged in the V. In this case, it is hand-built, and I have tried for the past 20 minutes to read that plaque, but I cannot get it. It's ML something or other Grove, so I'll just say vielen Dank. In any event, the output, 577 horsepower, comes in at 6,150 RPM, and then the torque, 516, comes in at 1,900 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 5,500 RPM. Now, if you are an AMG GTS fanboy, you know it's what, 74 more horsepower. So how do they get there? Well, it's not just tuning. They actually changed some important hardware. Like, for example, in the turbochargers, they changed the compressor wheel. They're bigger, so the boost goes from 17.4 psi to 19.6 psi. The compression ratio drops from 10.5 to 1 to 9.5 to 1, and that's partially because they mill out the exhaust ports, so there's better air efficiency, airflow. Well, something very important here we have to remember from that AMG GT C is the engine placement. Notice that is very much front mid-engine, meaning the engine sits behind the front axle. Well, there's a transaxle back there, and like the engine, it's kind of all the same. It's a 7-speed dual clutch unit. But what they do is they change the first gear and the 7th gear. The first gear is taller, and the 7th gear is shorter. So we're going to have to spend some time in the coming full first drive review to find out how much more usable that first gear is now that it's taller. And now, the interior. And if you take one look at it, you can tell there's no difference from the car we had on the show before. Well, except if you consider color trim and so many options that you and I have to do a mini options game in the coming full first drive review. And really a hinweis in advance of that, the headline is carbon fiber and a lot of it. Door panels, console, even up here. It is not all free, and some of it is rather expensive. And believe it or not, not all of it is trim. There is an option back here. It's a crossbar, so it would fall under the heading of some function, so lateral stiffness. And that is indeed made out of carbon fiber. It has a matte finish to it, and it's $1,600. Then there's a seat, same as in Santa Maria Madre de Dios, that E63S wagon, which I still miss so much. And then there's the contrasting stitching, which I believe either picks up the grüne Hülle or my favorite option, which is gelb seatbelts. Not free, $500. Then this car has two other unique options, illuminated door sills, and then it has a front axle lift, which you kind of need with the front end of this car. But they did borrow a page out of like the early 90s Pontiac playbook by putting the button up here. Like, remember back in the day they used to have the subwoofer button up here? I guess they could do it here because they've got a spacer and you could really use a subwoofer in this thing. Anyway, that's everything on the inside. Oh, except for this, but we'll get to that in the coming full first drive review. So, a little inside baseball here. I really did not expect to do a second tech review on an AMG GT. And I figured, hey, we covered it already in the GTC tech review, but then Kumo and I are sitting around and he's rattling off all this stuff that's different in a GTR. So, basically got outvoted, and he said I had to do a second tech review, and it's not just the engine stuff we're talking about. More of the changes are driving dynamics. So this Think of this as like the post-doc tech review to that AMG GT C, or picking up from double wishbone suspension all the way around and adjustable dampers, blah, 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 blah. Here, let's start with wider track. In the front, 1.8 inches wider. Here, 2.3 inches wider. Then there are the brakes. This is kind of the same story as the last one. 15.4 inch diameter rotors in the front, 14.2 in the rear. However, this one is fitted with the $9,000 carbon ceramic rotors. So 15.8 in the front with 6 piston calipers and still 14.2 in the back. Then there are the comical numbers of the wheels and tires. In the front, 19 by 10, 20 by 12. The rubber, 275/35. That's in the front, 325/30s in the back, and huge thing to note, fitted from the factory as standard Pilot Sport Cup 2s. Now, if that were not enough, there is rear wheel steer fitted as standard. Now, the GTC that we drove had it. This one is fitted as standard as well, so that is what, 1.5 degrees or really up to 1.5 degrees of steering in the back. Obviously, low speeds is opposite direction, high speeds in the same direction. And then on top of all that, there is an adjustable, best way to put it, an adjustable traction control system, but it's not just on or off, or like on, medium, and completely off. It's multiple like positions that you can fine tune. That is definitely something we're going to have to play around with in the coming full first drive review. So now do you see what I'm talking about by post-doc of a tech review of an AMG GT? Yes, this is the part of the tech review where I normally blabber on about dimensions and weight. But we don't need to spend any time talking about dimensions because we already did it in the previous AMG GT C tech review. The only difference here is the track, which we already covered. So let's focus right on the weight. And here we need to talk about construction. No, not platforms, but specifically the use of exotic materials. This and this, not fake. So even Captain Obvious could say the wing is carbon fiber. The roof is carbon fiber. The rest of it is hidden underneath the green paint. The fender's carbon fiber. The front splitter, carbon fiber. The rear diffuser, carbon fiber. The single-piece torque tube that connects the engine and the transaxle, that, carbon fiber. Then, underneath the car, not one, but 3 braces, carbon fiber. And remember, this specific car here has an additional carbon fiber brace inside the car. Now, you would think that that's all done to lower the weight. An AMG GT, the base car, 3,560 pounds, its direct competitor, a 911 GT3. I'm not just the one telling you this. You speak to the people that run AMG, they say this car directly competes with a GT3 or GT3 RS. That's what, 3,100 to 3,200 pounds, also a 500 plus horsepower car. Well, sadly, it's actually more weight, even with all that stuff, 3,594 pounds. So what we're going to have to spend the whole first drive review doing is understanding how does that weight penalty work against more horsepower and more torque. In the interim, I do want to leave you with a question that's directly associated with the weight. Does that penalty, which is what, almost 10%, does it hinder the car to you, or do you not care? So, in other words, would you choose the GT3 because it's lighter, or would you choose this because it's got power and torque to somehow counteract that extra weight? Let me know why or why not. And you know what? What region of the world you hail from, and do you drive one of these two cars? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I do need to leave you with one thing, and again, it's about the damn color. This proves my point, where these are ruined when they're fitted or finished in black, because it loses all the detail of the car. Look at how much more sensual this car is in a lighter color. Now do you get my point? Until I see you next time, bis später.